Thunderwolf Cavalry. They're a concept that I should disapprove of because of how daft it is, but I can't bring myself to because of just how awesome it is to have Space Marines riding giant wolves. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today sees our first focused unit review for the Space Wolves, where we'll be turning our lens on the Thunderwolf Cavalry, including their unit profile, ways to equip and arm them, their synergies on the board, and how I would use them in a game of 40k. In the background, the Thunderwolf Cavalry are an elite force of Space Wolves Wolf Guard, who ride enormous Fenrisian Thunderwolves into battle. The Space Wolves don't officially acknowledge the existence of these Thunderwolf Cavalry, and their appearance is so rare on the battlefield that they're considered mythical to the wider Imperium. Thunderwolves themselves are monstrous predators that prowl the northernmost ice caps of Fenris, and are very much one of the apex land predators on the planet. Their woven fur is as near as tough as steel, and their bite is fully capable of tearing straight through metal. The practice of hunting down and breaking in these Thunderwolves is an initiation rite in the Wolf Guard, and once they have tamed one of these mighty beasts, they are often even further augmented with adamantium jaws, bionics and adamantium claws to make them even more vicious on the battlefield. So let's see what these beasts can do on the tabletop. So here we have a datasheet for Thunderwolf Cavalry, available from Warhammer. They're a fast attack choice for Codex Space Wolves, and at base each model will cost you 40 points, when it's armed with a bolt pistol, chainsword and frag and crack grenades. The Thunderwolf riders have a very respectable profile, with a movement of 10, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3+, strength 4, toughness 5, 3 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 8 and a 3-up save, so at base similar in cost and durability to a unit of aggressors. You also get a sergeant included in the squad, and he gets an extra attack with the same leadership. You can choose to include another 3 Thunderwolves in the squad to a maximum of 6. As well as the weapons of the rider, they also have the crushing teeth and claws of the Thunderwolf itself. Basically, after the main model makes its close combat attacks, the mount can also make its close combat attacks, and the Thunderwolf will hit home with another 3 additional attacks at strength 5, AP-1 and 1 damage. So with Shock Assault you're looking at 6 attacks on the charge, hitting on 2s, and some of them at an augmented profile. Now the Thunderwolves have some decent options. First of all, they can replace that chainsword with a Storm Shield. This costs only 5 points extra and gives you a 3+ invul save, so I would typically recommend doing this. It means that instead of being extra vulnerable to high strength, high AP weapons, you'll now be able to shrug that off 2 out of every 3 times, and for the boost to durability, it's definitely well worth it. I'd advocate having the majority of the squads have Storm Shields. For just 5 points additional per model, it is pretty worth it. You do also have the option to trade out that chainsword for a melee weapon, although seeing as you can do that with the bolt pistol, I'd typically recommend just trading out the bolt pistol for a melee weapon instead. If you pass up the Storm Shield and trade out the chainsword, the best options are a pair of lightning claws or a pair of wolf claws, as they do give you an extra attack for doing that. If not, I'd just either keep the chainsword or upgrade to the Storm Shield and swap out the bolt pistol for something else. Coming on to that, the bolt pistol can be swapped out for either a bolt gun, plasma pistol, or an item from the melee weapons list. If you're looking to have one of the Thunderwolves in your squad, being very cheap and being the first one to die to enemy fire, swapping out the bolt pistol for a bolt gun and taking the Storm Shield in the other arm might not be such a bad idea, as they can likely get a few bolt shots off as they move up, while still only costing 45 points, and then you could use that Thunderwolf to tank the damage on before enemy fire eats through to your more expensive tooled up wolves with better gear. In terms of actually tooling up your Thunderwolf Cavalry for melee though, you really do have a decent amount of options. You've got the options of the Frost Axe, Frost Sword or Wolf Claw, out of which the Frost Sword and the Wolf Claw are my favourites. The Frost Sword is cheaper and has better AP, and the Wolf Claw is only slightly more expensive than the Frost Axe, but gets you full reroll to wounds, so it's pretty much better in every situation. For some proper hitting power though, I think you'll be wanting to look at least some Power Fists or Thunderhammers, which synergise very well with the Space Wolves chapter tactic, getting +1 to hit when they're in the first round of close combat. Both the Power Fists and Thunderhammers work pretty well here. The Power Fists are slightly more efficient in terms of damage per point, but the Thunderhammers allow you to focus all of the hitting power in just a couple of models in the squad, meaning that you can remove them last. I think there really are a few different ways you could go with this. You could go really heavy with the Power Fists and Thunderhammers and create a really mean anti-tank squad, with the slight price that you'll be losing expensive power weapons as soon as you start to lose your first wolf. Or you could go with a bit more of a mixed approach, maybe take a couple of Thunderhammers, a couple of Wolf Claws, and a couple of Wolves with just Storm Shield and Chainsword to tank some hits. It just depends on how much you want to invest in that squad getting to the front line, and how hard you want them to be able to hit if and when they get there. Thunderwolves have all the normal Space Wolf special rules, including Shock Assault for those extra attacks, and Combat Doctrines which will make them extra vicious than the Assault Doctrine, particularly with the extra hits on 6s that the new Space Wolves get as of Saga of the Beast. One thing to note as a disadvantage in their datasheet though, is that they are cavalry and not infantry, and this does make them somewhat limited with the targets that they can engage. In particular, cavalry just don't really interact very well with terrain features, meaning that they have to go round ruined walls, they can't just go straight through them like infantry can, and it means they won't be able to charge units on middle floor ruins and things at all, potentially giving enemy units an easy way of hiding from them. It's certainly not the be all and end all, and I think they can still be effective, but it does mean that there's just that little bit more counterplay to them. Overall though, Thunderwolf Cavalry are a relatively fast moving, hard hitting assault unit that can be pretty durable when loaded up with storm shields. Let's have a talk about how we can get more out of them on the tabletop with buffs, synergies and stratagems then. We've already mentioned how the Hunters Unleashed and Savage Fury traits increase Thunderwolf Cavalry's efficiency in close combat, meaning they're certainly a solid unit for taking advantage of the Space Wolves' unique buffs. In terms of character support, the Thunderwolves are very well provisioned indeed, with the huge access to characters that Space Wolves have. Naturally, you can increase their damage output with rerolls via the Wolf Lord and the Wolf Guard Battle Leader, and get more out of them in melee with Wolf Priests, who might also be able to give them a boosted charge as well with the new Littleness. Canis Wolfborn also has synergy with them, making each Thunderwolf have an additional attack in close combat with its crushing teeth and claws, as well as giving them reroll once to wound, so it's a good support character. Rune Priest or Njal can potentially use the Stormcaller power to get them cover as they advance, though this won't be the biggest deal against anything but low AP weapons, or could potentially use the Cloaked by the Storm stratagem to give them and some other advancing Space Wolf units -1 to hit. The all-new Ragnar can certainly help them get into close combat by re-rolling some charges and give some re-rolls and some better consolidation to boot, although he might struggle to keep up a bit being on foot. Finally, the aura buff that Wolfen can give with Curse of the Wolfen, either making it easier for them to make charges via the Hunt ability, or just getting extra attacks from the Kill ability. So if you are taking a full unit of Thunderwolf Cavalry, it might be best to pair them with a similar hard-hitting threat of Wolfen to run up alongside them. In terms of relics and warlord traits, the Wolfen Stone is a very easy way of getting extra attacks on the Thunderwolves if you have a fighty character that's carrying it up alongside the Thunderwolves, and several of the warlord traits with their Sagas of Legend accomplished can also be helpful as well. In particular, the Saga of the Hunter can be very handy for advancing and charging with the Thunderwolves, and all your warlord has to do is to make a successful charge to make that happen. So you could perhaps run a fighty character up alongside them with this trait, perform the charge first while still having a Thunderwolf in range, and then they will be able to charge even if they did advance that turn. The rest are all generally pretty useful, but of course they only affect the Thunderwolf models if you manage to accomplish their Deed of Legend, and some of them are hard or annoying to do. In terms of stratagems, there are a fair few available for the Thunderwolves. Honour the Chapter for 3 command points to fight again in the fight phase is always useful when combined with big meaty melee beatsticks such as the Thunderwolves, so 3 command points to have them delete another key threat in the fight phase could well be well spent. And in the fight phase the Thunderwolves have a few decent buffs that can increase their melee damage output. For 1 command point we have Overwhelming Savagery, which is just a reroll 1s to wound buff. It's not loads, but it could well be worth it if you need to squeeze every ounce of damage out of that charge. Death Grip Bite, which can make the Thunderwolves' teeth and claw attacks damage 2 rather than damage 1. Could be handy if you're against some Primaris Intercessors or something. And Crushing Charge to cause mortal wound impact hits on an enemy unit on the roll of a 2+ for each Thunderwolf that makes it in within 1 inch of the unit. If you do succeed a charge with a maxed out unit of Thunderwolves, and you can get multiple units in range and in combat, this one could well be worth it, but obviously only if you're not just going to totally wipe them out anyway with the Thunderwolves attacks. Finally, Transhuman Physiology is certainly a powerful one to be using on the Thunderwolves, as anything that wounds them on 3s or better will only wound them on 4s now. Combined with Storm Shields, this will make anti-tank fire pretty rubbish against Thunderwolves in terms of being efficient in terms of point-for-point damage. So how would I actually use Thunderwolves in a game of 40k then? As we talked about a bit in the loadout section, I typically want to equip most if not all of the squad with Storm Shields to make them more survivable, and include a decent amount of Thunderhammers or Power Fists so they can deal with hard targets, as the Thunderwolf bite attacks will make a decent mess of light infantry. In particular, I think that the pack leader should usually have a Thunderhammer having 3 attacks and 4 on the charge, meaning that he will be hitting very, very hard indeed. I'd keep at least a couple of wolves cheap, armed with just chainswords and storm shields, or bolters and storm shields, or maybe just give them a frost sword or something, as likely you are going to take some casualties before they make combat, so there's not a lot of point in paying for thunder hammers on every guy if you're pretty sure that not all of them are going to make close combat. When setting up, they're going to want to be fairly close to the front in your deployment zone, as they're only really going to make any impact on the game if they do get into close combat. But obviously if there's any handy terrain that you can make use of to block line of sight to enemies, then it can be worth taking advantage of, provided it's not going to mess with your movement too much. Remember that these guys can't go straight through walls, and they have to go around. If the battle plan is just to run headlong at the enemy, it's worth having multiple different threats, so at least some of them manage to get through. I'd say if you're running one unit of Thunderwolf Cavalry, it probably makes sense to take a unit of Wolfen alongside them, as they act as a very similar, very scary threat, and also they can buff the Cavalry because of the Wolfen special rule. You can support those 2 or more units with Space Wolf characters. There's all manner of characters that can buff the units when they get into combat, or be scary threats in their own right, or both, and Rune Priests could offer some measure of protection if you are willing to expend a significant amount of CP to make them -1 to hit with that stratagem. It is expensive, but I do think it will be worth it against some armies, particularly ones with ballistic skill 4+, where the -1 really hurts for a turn. With the rest of the army, I think you want as many other scary threats moving forwards as possible, just to overwhelm your opponent's ability to deal with them, rather than just having, say, this one unit of Thunderwolves move up, so they can focus that one down when it gets close, and then pay attention to the rest of your army. I feel like one unit of Thunderwolves are quite unlikely to make combat on their own. You need to have multiple pressing things for the opponent to consider on all sides, so they're just not able to deal with all of it. When you're moving out, certainly think about advancing turn 1, then you need to think about what position you're going to be in to hopefully get a second turn charge, and I think it's generally just worth throwing them in the general direction of the enemy as far as possible to give yourself as many charge options as you can, and force your opponent to have to deal with them or face some wolfy death. When they do make the charge, provided they have a few thunder hammers along, they should be able to put a pretty sizable dent in virtually anything they can reach, and then you can scatter as many of those damage dealing stratagems as you want in terms of how much you think that you need to get the job done. It's far harder on larger based models to be able to wrap and trap enemy units, but if you can, then obviously you should, or at least try and consolidate or pile into other units to tie them up and mess with their movement. If they've made it this far and are still managing to survive, then hopefully you're in a fairly good position for charging into the core of the enemy army and really disrupting their game plan for good. Overall, I think that Thunderwolves are a fairly strong Space Wolves unit, getting a lot out of their melee-centered buffs, being reasonably tough and reasonably fast at getting towards the enemy, though they are a bit lacking in terms of fancy movement buffs or unusual deployment options that are generally what you'd want for a hard-hitting Space Marine melee unit. Within the Space Wolf Codex, the main other unit that you want to consider instead of them would be the Wolfen, who, as we've already said, fulfill a fairly similar role within the Codex, being a murderous melee unit that's fairly tough and durable, and can make a nasty mess of most foes. Wolfen kind of move just as fast, due to being able to advance and charge, and helpfully have the infantry keyword that allow them to use a lot more stratagems, such as setting up in outflank, and also interacting a lot better with terrain. So the Wolfen do have significant advantages, and I would seriously think about these guys as an alternative. At some point in the future, I'm sure we'll have to do a Thunderwolves versus Wolfen comparison to really look at the numbers as to what they can do in close combat and their relative advantages and disadvantages when getting there. So I hope you've enjoyed the first video in our Space Wolves series. There'll be plenty more to come over the coming month. Let me know if there's any particular videos that you'd really like to see down in the comments below. If I have missed anything or got any rules wrong, again let me know as well. If it's anything pressing, then I will post a correction in the comments myself. If you would be interested in seeing more Space Wolves content, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. We also have plenty of other 40k content coming out every single day. Finally, if you'd like to help keep these videos coming, the channel does have a Patreon page, which is what allows me to focus so much time on this at the expense of my regular job. It takes quite a lot of time to make these short videos, with around about 2 hours for a 15-minute video. So if you are regularly enjoying the content, then any support is much appreciated, and of course a big thank you to all of my current Patreons. In any case, thank you very much for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.